Today, all right. Today we're going to talk about the art of uncertainty. And this talk and some of the content of the talk were inspired by a wonderful book called The Art of Uncertainty by Dennis Merritt Jones. I'll put the link in the chat in case people want to know more about the book. I can certainly recommend it. But let's talk about uncertainty for a minute. It feels like uncertainty is all around us. I mean, all you have to do is watch the news for just a minute or two, and you might begin to feel scared or uncertain of the future. Uncertainty certainly can feel frustrating. It can feel scary. It can feel confusing. It can feel downright terrifying. Our minds can take all this and run with it until we are paralyzed with fear. Or, according to this book, we can accept the I don't know, which is what uncertainty is, and embrace the possibilities. When I talk about the I don't know, I'm talking about it on a personal level, our lives, your life, my life. For years, a lot of you know, I taught the principles of the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. These principles helped me change my attitudes and actions about money and creativity and life's passions. I always say that when people get the book or they take one of my Think and Grow Rich classes, which by the way are still taught online for a company called Glidewing, when they come, they see the word rich in the title. That's what brings them. But they leave having learned the word grow. Our prosperity, our growth comes through the word grow. But early on in those classes, people are asked to create a goal. And it could be any kind of goal, but usually in those classes, it was a monetary goal. And they would write down a goal. And I would ask them, does that goal make you excited? Does it make you thrilled to get up each day and do the work? And then they'd usually up the goal just a little bit more. And I'd ask the same questions. Does that goal excite you? And eventually what would happen is that they would write down a goal that was really large and it did excite them. But then they would think or say, just don't know how this is going to happen. And then they would lower their goal again. The how was the sticking point. This is across the board. This happened more times than it didn't with people. And it happened with me early on as well. So I totally understood it. The crux of the matter was that if we couldn't see how something could happen, then our thinking mind would say it probably couldn't happen, it wouldn't happen, and it won't happen. There is some wisdom in that, in the sense that it's good to have a reasoning mind that can protect us. And yet, if we only go by what we can see will happen, then we are often bound to live a small life. Why? Because we don't know what we don't know. The uncertainty feels scary, and so we reason away possibility. This is one of the main reasons why we often don't manifest what we want, because we cannot allow ourselves to open ourselves up to possibilities beyond what we already know or can see from our vantage point. Further, this shows that we want to control how things happen in our lives. We, our minds, are the filter in which we experience our own reality. Our minds, our attitudes, our beliefs filter our reality. This is one reason why two people can have similar experiences of the very same thing and have totally different outcomes from it. I remember when I first became a practitioner in our organization, this is back in the early 90s, and the church that I was attending at that time had what they called practitioner duty. And this is when the licensed practitioners would be available after each of the Sunday services to do quick prayers or spiritual mind treatments with people. There would be about 6 or 7 practitioners, and we'd have like little 2-chair formations, facing each other. And there'd be several sets of 2-chair formations. And the practitioners would sit on one of the chairs, And then there would be a line of people wanting prayers, and they one by one would sit in the other chair. And when you were done with one person, that person would leave, and then whomever was next in line would come and sit down, and you would work with them. Seemingly random. Now, practitioners are not therapists, and the point of the short session was quick affirmative prayer. But oftentimes, the person would want to explain a bit of their situation. And I remember early on, this might have been my first, second, or third time doing prac duty on a Sunday. And I had a woman sit across from me. She said she wanted prayer because she was getting divorced, and it was devastating to her. Her husband had cheated, and she was filled with rage and anger and disbelief and fear and so many other things. And she wanted revenge on her husband. Well, I was a new practitioner, so I just took a breath and I just treated or prayed as best I could. I connected with oneness and was just knowing the highest and greatest good for both her and her husband. And then she left, and I took a deep breath. And then the next person in line came and sat down in front of me. It was another woman about the same age as the previous one. And she said she wanted prayer because she was getting divorced. Her husband also had cheated on her, and she was devastated. She wanted prayer support, though, for a healthy ending of the relationship and for her anger and sadness to heal, and so that they could find a peaceful path to maintain love through the divorce. I took another deep breath and treated for the highest good for both her and her husband. Now, that experience never left me. I know that there are a million factors involved, but the very different attitudes of these two people with seemingly similar-ish difficult situations made such an impression on me that I've remembered over the years. When something happens to me, which of the two do I want to be? Which attitude do I want to have? Now, the subtitle of Dennis Merrick Jones' book, which I see Brian says we have 2 copies left in the bookstore, so you can get them as a bargain, by the way. It's worth it. The subtitle of that book, The Art of Uncertainty, is Living in the Mystery of Life and Loving It. We have the power to love uncertainty, or we have the power to fear uncertainty. So why don't we love it? Why do we often fear uncertainty? Well, there are many reasons, but one big fear is of the unknown. Fear of what if? We want to feel safe, like a bird in a cage. And though the cage can be small, it feels safe. And we would often rather hold on to the little we have than to risk it for more. Hey, many of us grew up watching shows like Let's Make a Deal and The Price is Right. You guys remember those shows? And we know what happens when you win a showcase with a pool table and a stereo console, only to be offered by Bob Barker what is behind. You can keep what you have, or you can choose what is behind curtain number 2. And the contestant is usually scared to lose that pool table, but they wonder, what is behind that other curtain? Is it a new washer, dryer, and dishwasher set? Or is it a vacation to Mazatlan? Is it a brand new car? And the crowd's yelling at them. And then they choose often to risk it all. And the curtain opens, and they got a year's supply of rice-a-roni, the delicious San Francisco treat. And, on that show, they would also play that sound when they would do that. So we knew the score. Fear behind what is curtain number 2. You don't want the rice-a-roni. You should have kept the pool table and been happy with it, even though you don't have a place to put it. Keep what you have. Stay safe. Stay in the cage. After all, as that famous saying goes, the devil you know is better than the one you don't. But the problem with that saying is we don't believe in the devil. We say each week, heaven and hell are states of mind. So that saying in our language reads, better the small state of mind than expanding it to a larger one. Another reason we fear uncertainty is that it might mean we'll have to change our stories. We'll have to tell a new story about ourselves or about others or about an experience. It's easier being the victim of our stories than it is becoming a hero sometimes. We get a lot of sympathy. We don't have to work as hard. We don't have to risk losing. And we can control how we feel and how others view us. But this is the important thing to remember, and this is something to write down. The power to begin a new life, a bigger life, starts the moment we stop telling the stories that keep us stuck and small. The power to begin a new, bigger life starts the moment we stop telling the stories that keep us stuck and small. The problem with using fear of uncertainty to stay small, to stay in the cage, is that life is always, in the words of our founder, Ernest Holmes, life is always, always, always urging us to grow. Always. Life is always beckoning us to become all of who we are. And that means risking uncertainty. Dennis Barrett Jones calls this the universal imperative to grow or perish. Look at nature, grow or perish. Allowing our fear of uncertainty to maintain and to control our little lives means we are actually trying not to live out the urge within us, which is saying, grow, grow, grow. And I don't mean grow that the way the world would have you grow. I mean grow the way your soul would have you grow. Growth means change. And one thing I've learned on this path is that change is going to happen no matter how hard I try to keep it at bay, no matter how hard I try to hold on to what I have, no matter how much I might fear uncertainty. And I also have learned is that when change is ready to emerge in my life, it'll come. And it usually happens one of two ways. I am either pushed into it through pain, or I am pulled into it by passion and possibilities. On the one hand, it comes even when I don't choose it. And on the other hand, it comes because I choose it. Either way, change is going to happen. And either way, I am faced with uncertainty. So, how do I choose change? How do I prepare for growth? How do I embrace uncertainty? Well, Buddhists tell us that the more attached we are to something, the more suffering we open ourselves up to experiencing. We often are very attached people. We are attached to outcomes. We are attached to people. We are attached to our fear. We are attached to our stories. We are attached to our cages. We are sometimes so attached that we grip what we're attached to until our fingers hurt. We hold it, we keep it, we control it. But if we know that change is constant, then we're told letting go of our attachments can allow us to be in the flow of life. It can help us to breathe in our lives. It's funny, in the Artist Way classes that we do, the Artist Way from Julia Cameron, the author Julia Cameron has students write letters to themselves from the vantage or viewpoint of their wise self, capital W, wise, capital S, self. That wise self is that part of us that is in each one of us. It's our highest self, our timeless self, the part of us that isn't afraid and has never been afraid. And we are told to take a breath, connect with that part of ourselves, be in its presence, and then ask this wise self this question, which is, what do I need to know right now? And then open our eyes and allow our wise self to write a letter back to us. I've written a million of these, and I facilitated many groups and heard many other wise self letters. And what's interesting is the wise self very often, and I mean very often, tells us to let go. That's a common theme. Why? Because we're often holding on to something that no longer serves us or that isn't in our own best interest. The wise self also almost always says to fear not. and to see the circumstances of our lives from a different perspective, a different lens, from the wise self lens. Letting go doesn't always mean abandoning or losing or failing, but that's sometimes how it feels. If we let go, then they win, or I lose, or I won't get what I want. But the opposite is usually true. By loosening that tight grip of holding on or forcing something or someone to ourselves, we release people and experiences in ourselves. We let others learn their own lessons. We close circles when we need to, and we let go of what no longer serves us. We let go of what we grip, the lesser, so that we might open our hands to the greater. I keep that in mind. I actually have this on the table right behind me that I see every day. Just this beautiful little open hand reminding me to not grip life, to open myself up to the greater. Letting go, I believe, is fundamental to our happiness, including letting go of the fear of the unknown. Our ego wants to be in control, but our soul wants us to fly. So, how do we do this? Very quickly, here are some ways to begin the journey of letting go of the fear of uncertainty and loving the mystery of life. These are questions that you can answer in your own head, or you can write down and answer later in your journal. But I'm going to think of them as if you were writing them in a journal. So write these down. At the top of one page, write, what is holding me back? And then under that, list all the things and the ways that come to your mind that hold you back. List habits, beliefs, attitudes, procrastination, people, the people that hold you back, everything. List everything you could think of. Turn the page. On the next page, draw 2 lines down the page, which will make 3 columns. And at the top of one column, write things I can change. And at the top of the second column, write things I cannot change. Under the things you can change, obviously, write your habits, your actions, your thinking, your attitudes, your place of employment, your relationship status, everything. Things you can change. Under things you cannot change, perhaps this is right where you would write things like, I cannot change other people. Or you could write big things, like, I cannot change the systemic oppression of marginalized people. Or I cannot change climate, the climate crisis. Those are big things that can feel scary. And I of myself single-handedly cannot change those things. But that's why I have you have column 3. And at the top of that column, I want you to write things I can influence. And while I alone cannot heal the climate or racism or politics, I can put in that column things that I can do, actions I can take to support the change I'd like to see. Turn the page. Write down, what do I want in my life? Most people don't even have a sense of what they really want. You might find it useful to write down, put it down in categories like career, relationships, finances, health, spirituality, and then define what you want in each one of those. Then turn the page, write a line down the center, so you're creating 2 columns, and at the top of one, write energizing, and at the top of the other, write draining. And then review your day, and for each activity and for each person, write, put down in each column which one they are. So for instance, you might put my boss under the draining column, and you might put that project, though, that I worked on in the energizing column, etc. And keep doing that with every single thing in your life. And then turn the page and write at the top of the page, what am I willing to let go of? And then take a breath and review all those previous pages we just did, because all the answers are right there. And then finally, turn the page one more time, take a deep breath, connect with that wise self within you, and ask it, what do I most need to know right now? Then take a breath and let the pen flow across the page as you allow your wise self to give you sage, loving advice. Remember, we can Let go of the fear of uncertainty and open the mystery door and embrace what's on the other side, no matter what's on the other side. The power to begin a new life, to grow, starts when we stop telling the stories that keep us small and afraid and stuck. Our ego may want us to fear uncertainty, but our soul wants us to fly. So in closing, I'm reminded of this chorus to an old country song. And I'm going to read you the chorus, but think of it as your soul saying this to you. And the song goes, give me wings, and don't be afraid if I fly. A bird in a cage will forget how to sing. So, if you love me, give me wings. Let's affirm this together in prayer as we use our wings to grow and to expand. Take a breath and just know with me that right now we connect to that wise self, the wise self, that oneness, that wise self that is, in the words of Ernest Holmes, forever eternally singing in our ear. We take a breath as we connect in the presence of our own wise self, which is presence itself. And in that higher place where we don't have fear of anything, we don't have to be bound by anything, we're not in the cage. Instead, we are free. We are open and we experience true love. We experience what we want. And it's in this place that we can see the things we need to let go. And so we let go of them now with love. You can picture people leaving and bless them. Circumstances leaving, bless them. And as we breathe, we now open ourselves up to the greater possibilities that lie just on the other side of the door of uncertainty. We embrace and love that mystery of life each day, every day, taking the steps that we know are positive and good for us and opening ourselves up to life, moving us, directing us, and helping us along each step of the way. It's so great to live from this vantage point, from this place, so that we know that our life is guided and directed in beautiful, wonderful ways, and that the purpose and meaning of our life unfolds daily. Oh, for that, I'm so grateful to know that for every one of us hearing these words. I release this right now into love and law, knowing that even as I say these words, they are true for each one of us right here and right now. And so it is.